up, my people? Today we are talking about corporate gaslighting. What happens when a company is gaslighting its employees wholesale? That is a question that is always relevant because somebody's always up to no good on that front. So if you're wondering about corporate gaslighting, if you're questioning whether you're being gaslit at a corporate level, tune in. I'm going to tell you how to identify it and what to do about it. All right, so let's dive in. What is corporate gaslighting? Corporate gaslighting is when a company insists upon a version of reality that its employees simply don't agree with, doesn't line up with the experience of the people working there. And it may be that only a few of the employee base are sensing that something's not quite right because everybody else has consumed the lie, right? It's like the best metaphor I can give you for corporate gaslighting is the Emperor's New Clothes story, right? In that old sort of fable, there is an emperor, the king or whatever the heck he was, and these very fine tailors walk in and they're like, well, King so-and-so, we are going to dress you for the gods. You're going to be the most well-dressed person in the kingdom. And they convince this king that he is going to be so resplendent and fabulous that people will not even be able to deal with how fabulous he is. And what do they put him in? Nothing. He is marching around that room trying on his new clothes and he is naked. But they are so effective at convincing him that he's just seeing things and that he's actually wearing something quite splendid that they successfully get him to purchase these very fine things that are actually nothing. And he marches out into his village, into his kingdom, and everyone is playing the same game because they're like, God, there must be something wrong with me because clearly he's naked, but everybody else is acting like he's wearing all these fabulous clothes. But then, of course, what happens? There's a child that says, excuse me, he's naked. And then as soon as the child says it, everybody else is like, oh my God, I thought it was just me. And the whole thing falls apart, right? This is what corporate gaslighting can feel like, right? The social pressure to pretend that the narrative that is being fed to them is accurate when you know it's not. It's hard. It's a lot of pressure to conform, even if it's something preposterous. If you're thinking to yourself, that would never happen. How could that possibly happen? I got 2 words for you. Well, 1 word if you do it the way they did it. And that word is WeWork. Have you ever heard the WeWork story? The startup started by Adam Newman with his sidekick Rebecca Newman as head of brand. This was a company that was basically a commercial real estate company, right? All they were doing were leasing out office spaces for people. It was a shared workspace model, right? But before anybody knew it, this little company became quite a big company. And at its height, WeWork had a $47 billion valuation. It had investors from the biggest names you can imagine, specifically SoftBank. SoftBank was pouring not millions, not hundreds of millions of dollars into WeWork, but billions of dollars into WeWork. And the fact is, because WeWork was a privately held startup, nobody really knew what the financial machinations were, really. All they knew was that there was a spellbinding, charismatic leader who was trying to grow as quickly as possible and thinking big. And everyone who met him fell in love with him, including the head of JP Morgan. This guy was enlisting investors like this. And things weren't totally lining up with people inside the company. One person was like, there are so many billions of dollars pouring into this company. How come I'm barely making ends meet? How come we're all getting paid so little and working so many hours? And one employee actually went so far as to call in a meeting with a labor attorney and other coworkers at WeWork to be like, time out, something is not right. We are grinding to the bone. We're not getting paid overtime. We're not being remunerated. Something is not right here. Something is illegal. And what happened to her? She was dismissed, right? She was forced out because she was not going along with the corporate gaslighting. She was calling a timeout on it and they were not having it. right? But because it was part of a system that she tried to change and couldn't change, she was spit out of the system. She was kicked out of the system. And even worse than that was one person recounted. In fact, you want to go deeper into the story, listen to the podcast, We Crashed. It's brilliant, brilliant, brilliant episodic telling of the story. But another executive that went to work at WeWork was literally sitting in a company offsite waiting to hear the company's plans for growing as quickly as they claimed they were going to grow. He's like, how are we going to launch all these offices? We can barely get a couple off open on time these days. Like, where are the business practices? What are the systems we're setting up? And instead, they went to this offsite. It was just a great big party. And they were talking about these really altruistic things they were working on, like ending child abuse and, saving the world. He's like, okay, we're a commercial real estate company. Can we just focus on the buildings? Corporate gaslighting did not like that, right? Everyone around him were caught up in this different narrative. When did the corporate gaslighting game end with WeWork? With the introduction of the necessity for the IPO. When SoftBank would no longer pour its money into WeWork was like, ruh-roh, we need money and we need it fast. We need billions of dollars and we need it fast. Where can we go? How about the open market? So they decided to begin the process for filing for an IPO, which is an initial public offering. But here's what you gotta love about an IPO. You have to come clean about your financials. And the minute they filed that paperwork, Wall Street got wind of the nakedness of the king, and the whole thing started to collapse on itself. And so they withdrew the public offering. They eventually did go public, but at a greatly reduced market valuation. My point here is this: corporate gaslighting happens all the time. All the time. And the pressure to conform, the pressure to drink the proverbial Kool-Aid, as they say, right? The pressure to go along with what we know is false is enormous. So now if you're watching this and you're thinking to yourself, oh God, I think I'm part of a vast corporate gaslighting conspiracy moment. What do I do? Listen, here's the thing. First thing you got to do is know your rights. Right? You might want to talk to a labor lawyer. You may want to cover your bases. You may want to reach out to HR and test the waters. Is HR in on this? What are your concerns? Get crystal clear about what your concerns are. Find out what kind of protections you have. There are whistleblower laws in place that you can enact, that you can be supported and protected by. You can talk to a labor lawyer. You can begin the process of covering your own self to ensure your safety, to make sure that you are protected. But here's what you need to know. Depending on where you are in the cycle of a corporate gaslighting issue, if you are one of the early whistleblowers, right? If you're one of the early people to call a timeout and say, hey, the king is naked, you may not be able to make a change. It may be that you need to move on. It may be that you need to find your good elsewhere, as they say, and cut your losses and walk. Because the truth is, when you are part of a system that is huge and you are just one little person, there's only so much you can do. We have the famous example of a whistleblower at Facebook that exposed a lot of different things at Facebook. She was not able to do that while she was still working there. It had massive consequences for her. It's not to say you shouldn't choose to fight it and be a whistleblower or call a timeout and say, what the heck is going on here? It's just that you need to be prepared for what that journey looks like. So the greatest thing you can do is, before you take any action, figure out what your rights are, talk to an attorney, suss out HR. Are they on your side, or are they kind of protecting the corporate gaslighting narrative? These are things you need to figure out. And it may be that you can't make a difference, in which case it means dust off your resume and get the hell out of Dodge, because you do not want to be one of the last people standing at a place like that. Am I right? But I do want to make a distinction. There is a difference between corporate gaslighting and just aggressive marketing, right? Corporate gaslighting is when we are lying or obfuscating around business fundamentals, right? Where unfair labor practices are happening or untrue financial accounting is happening. That is a corporate gaslighting situation where they're trying to cover that stuff up. But if it's aggressive marketing. It may be that you are talking a big game or making your brand really big. I mean, if you look at the WeWork example, a lot about their branding was pretty genius. It was great. It made people feel something. It was evocative. It wasn't necessarily the branding that was the problem. The problem was that they were prioritizing brand speak over what is appropriate and financially responsible accounting, business practices, all the rest. So there's a little bit of nuance there. And do your research to make sure you're not picking a fight with aggressive branding and that you're picking a fight with corporate gaslighting, because there is a difference. Listen, I hope that helps. I hope it makes a difference. Let me know what's happening in your world, and I'll see you next time. Shine on, my friend. We need your light.